Hello everybody, welcome back to new session. I am Nandakishore, Faculty of English in Vidhyaashram, Mysuru. In my previous session, I had discussed about indirect speech, which is also known as reported speech. In today's session, I am going to discuss about passage or comprehension. From the examination point of view, this question or this topic will be asked for 10 marks. So kindly concentrate and know the rules that I am going to teach you in today's session. When we talk about passage or comprehension, what is this comprehension? What does it mean? Comprehension is nothing but reading a passage or a couple of paragraphs and trying to understand, trying to extract the meaning out of it and answering the questions. So let's start with today's session. There are a set of rules you need to know, you have to know, and you must know. So what are the set of rules that you need to know in order to score 10 out of 10 in answering this passage questions? Set of questions to be answered in sequence. What does it mean? Let us say that there are 10 questions starting from 1 to 10, and few students in examination, they tend to answer question number 3 first, and then 6, they come back to 1, they go back to 4, and then they slip to 10. They do it. They mix up the question sequence. You are not supposed to do the mistake. Why? Because it is a mandatory rule that all the questions under the passage should be in one place and it should be in sequence itself. You cannot change the sequence order. This is a wrong way. So don't do it. Be careful. Next one, follow the trick of skimming and scanning. What is this meaning of skimming and scanning? What does it mean? This trick will work, this rule will work for those students who are very slow in writing or attempting the questions. If you have just left 10 minutes, if you want to hurry in the last 10 minutes, you can just follow the trick of skimming and scanning. You need not go through the passage word by word or line by line. You can just rush it. You can just go through it, and if you can remember what you have read, it is well and good. Now the third rule is answer to the point. This is very important. Most of the students, those who tend to fail in English or those who tend to see English as a difficult language, you need to follow the rule. Because let us say for the second question, the answer lies in the third line. For question number 2, the answer lying in third line. And few students, they tend to write all the 3 lines, 1, 2 and 3. And then they think the answer for the second question is in the third line, but I have written 1, 2 and 3 lines. So marks should be given to me. You will never get a mark. Keep this in mind. It should be precise. Answer to the point. There should be precision. Make use of basic vocabulary. What is this vocabulary? Most of you don't know the meaning of antonyms. Antonym is nothing but opposite word. Synonyms, the word with the same meaning. If you don't know these basic words, you cannot understand what the question is and how to answer the questions. Not just that, there are a lot of other words which you have to think of in order to answer the question. Next point is number the answers with the right question numbers. Most of you will mix up with the question numbers. You are attempting the second question and you have answered the second question. Instead of writing the question number 2, you will write question number 1. Will you get marks? You won't. So don't do the mistake. Very important point. This last point is very important and it is also time saving. When you don't have enough time, you need to follow this rule. It is very important. What is it? Whether to read the passage first or question set. If you ask me, I would suggest that you just go to the question series or question set, read the questions, read all the 10 questions. No need to worry. Even if you cannot remember all the 10 questions, it is okay. I am sure that you are going to remember at least first 2 or 3 questions. So the moment you read the questions first and then come back to the passage and start reading it, you may get the answer for the very first question or the second question or the third question as soon as you start reading the passage. So keep this in mind. If you ask me, I would suggest you to read the question set first. So let's start with it. I have taken a passage. These days, youngsters tend to watch cricket. So I have chosen an interesting topic. So remember, how do you read? I spoke about skimming and scanning. Will you just rush it or will you just go word by word? It is left to you. If you have plenty of time left, read word by word. If you don't have time, few students, they have the habit of attempting the passage at the end or at the last after attempting all the questions. So those students can just rush. Or if you have enough time, then you can just go word by word. So let's start solving this. The Indian Premier League, so-called IPL, is a professional T20 cricket league. Now, as soon as I read, what do? You cannot take a pencil and underline each and every word in the examination because there is a clear instruction given by the evaluators or the invigilators. There are clear instructions given by the invigilators asking you not to mark anything on the question paper. So you cannot mark or underline anything on the question paper. Be careful. But you can make use of any other method of remembering what you are reading. Now, T20 Cricket League in India held during April and May of every year by 8 teams representing 8 cities of India. The league was founded by the Board of Control for Cricket in India, which is also known as BCCI, in the year 2008 and is regarded as the brainchild of Lalit Modi, the founder and former commissioner of the league. IPL has an exclusive video for ICC Future Tours program. So what did you get to know? The moment you read this passage, you should be able to digest everything. You should be able to remember. Without looking at the question paper, you should be able to answer IPL, Indian Premier League. How many teams? 8. How many cities are they representing? 8. And in which, what is the duration? In which month do they host IPL? It is during the month of April and May. And when was it first initiated? In the year 2008. Who is the pioneer or the brainchild? What does this brainchild mean? It is nothing but who began or who came up with the idea of hosting IPL. It is none other than Lalit Modi. Who was he? What was his designation? He was former commissioner of the league. So you need to remember all this. This passage is pretty easy. But what about the passage in examination? It won't be as easy as this. So you need to remember, you need to put forth a bit of effort and remember what you are reading. If you cannot remember, then you don't have any other option than going back and turning back and forth the question paper and reading the question, one question, and then rereading the whole passage. So in order to answer all the 10 questions, you may have to read the passage more than 6 or 7 times, which is an utter waste of time. So don't do it. You have to remember what you are reading. So next, what happens? There will be paragraph 2. IPL is the most attended cricket league in the world and in 2014 ranked 6th by average attendance among all sports leagues. In 2010, IPL became the first sporting event in 2010, remember the year, world to be broadcast live on YouTube. The brand value of IPL in 2018 was US dollar 6.3 billion. So remember this, according to Duff and Phelps. According to BCCI, 2015 IPL season contributed 182 million US dollar to the GDP of the Indian economy. That is a huge amount. You need to remember everything. 182 million US dollar, not just 182 US dollar, it is 182 million. So that is a huge amount. Third paragraph, There have been 11 seasons of IPL tournament. The current IPL title holders are the Chennai Super Kings, who won the 2018 season. Now remember, though we are in 2020, I didn't speak about 2019. Why? Because we are sticking on to the passage given there. Don't use extra brilliancy to answer the question. You need to stick to the passage. Whatever it might be, follow the passage. Don't think, okay, Chennai Super Kings are not the present champions. It might be somebody else. Even though you know the truth, don't write it. You just stick to the plan. Next, what are the question sets? I have just chosen 5 questions here. How do you solve it? Let us read. Who pioneered Indian Premier League? As I told you, you need to have a good vocabulary. If your vocabulary is weak, you may not be able to score 10 out of 10. Why? Because the moment you don't understand the meaning of this, you may not be able to answer the question. You might think, okay, when year did the Indian Premier League begin? You can think whatever you want if you didn't understand the meaning of pioneered. Pioneered, I told you, it is nothing but who came up with an idea of starting IPL. According to the passage, it is Lalit Modi. Next one, how many IPL seasons have been played till 2018? If you remember, it began in 2008. So, till 2018, it becomes 10 seasons. In most of the questions, they might give you an option. Option A, 10. Option B, 11. Option C, 13. Option D, 15. So, you need to be clear when you answer. You need to know it. What is the antonym of the word professional in the passage? Now, as I told you, antonym is nothing but opposite word. So, what is the opposite word of professional? Unprofessional. So, be clear, you need to know the meaning of antonym and synonyms. If you don't know it, you might just answer the question or you can get it wrong. So, be clear and be precise while answering the question. You may need not answer everything in the word. What is the antonym of the word professional in the passage? You may not write. Antonym of the word professional is unprofessional. You don't have to write it. You don't have to write the entire sentence. If you can just add unprofessional, it is more than enough. In which year IPL became the first sporting event to be broadcasted live on an online platform? So, which is the year? In 2010. In the year 2010, it became the first sporting event to be broadcasted live on YouTube. Now, the last question, according to Duff and Phillips, the brand value of IPL in 2018 was, I told you, the brand value of IPL in 2018 was 6.3 billion. So, there are two numbers. One is 182 million, another one is 6.3 billion. So, you cannot just think, okay, it is none other than 182 million US dollar. No, it is wrong. Though you have read two numbers here, you need to be precise while answering. If you are in confusion, if you are in dilemma, don't rush. Just go back to the passage, reread it. Reading 1 or 2 times, it's good for you to understand and digest what you have read. To make it a bit complex, I have chosen the second passage, which is little tricky. An earthquake comes like a thief in the night without warning. So you need to remember everything you read. It could be every word. It was necessary, therefore, to invent instruments that neither slumbered in a sense which didn't take rest, that neither slumbered nor slept. Some devices were quite simple. One, for instance, consisted the rods of various lengths and thicknesses which would stand up on end like 9 pins. When a shock came, it shook the rigid table upon which these stood. So what did you understand after reading these lines? What are we talking about? We are talking about earthquake. An earthquake. What happens? And what is the basic idea here? What are we talking about? We are not just talking about an earthquake. We are talking about an instrument. An instrument. Inventing an instrument. Why is it so important to invent an instrument? It's because it comes like a thief without warning. There is no warning when it comes. So it is a must. What happens when there is an earthquake? There will be a lot of loss of lives. Now, some devices, as I told you, you need to understand the concept. You need to get the theme out of it. You need to get the meaning out of it, and only then you can understand the passage. In second paragraph, if it were gentle, if it were, what is this were here? It refers to earthquake. If it were gentle, only the more unstable rods fell. If it were severe, they all fell. Now, we are talking about various lengths, rods of various lengths and thicknesses which stood. We have a table, we have these rods which are placed on table. And how do they measure this earthquake intensity? If the smaller rods fell, that means there is less intensity of earthquake. If the bigger rods or the thicker rods fell, then the intensity or the level of intensity is too much. Thus, the rods by falling and by the direction in which they fell recorded for the slumbering scientists the strength of a shock that was too weak to waken him and the direction from which it came. But instruments far more delicate than that were needed if any really serious advance was to be made. We are talking about rods here. We don't have any other instruments. We don't have instruments which could record even the slightest movement in the earth. Now, let us move to the next paragraph. The ideal to be aimed at was to advise an instrument that could record with a pen on paper the movements of the ground or of the table as the quake passed by. While I write, my pen moves, but the paper keeps still. While I write, my pen moves, but the paper keeps still. With practice, no doubt, I could, in time, learn to write by holding the pen still while the paper moved. This is very tricky to understand. What is the author talking about? Or what is this topic talking about? He is talking about, or the topic is talking about, idea of recording the movement. Now imagine I am holding a pen here, I'm holding a paper here, and I am writing using my pen. So when I write on the paper, the pen is moving. In the second instance, he is reversing. The idea is reversed. The author is saying, or the concept is saying, I am going to keep my pen still and the paper has to move. If you observe the instrument of seismometer, only the graph will be moving. The pen is still, it keeps still, and the graph keeps moving. That is the basic idea here. Now, with practice, no doubt, I could in time learn to write by holding the pen still while the paper moved. That sounds a silly suggestion, but that was precisely the idea adopted in some of the early instruments, which is known as seismometers. So this is the meter, this is the instrument which is used to record the earthquake, for recording earthquake waves. In third paragraph, but when table, pen holder and paper are still moving, how is it possible to write legibly? Now he is saying, the author is saying, maybe the concept is saying, when the writer, the pen, the table, the paper, everything is moving, how is it possible to write legibly? It is not possible. The key to a solution of that problem lay in an everyday observation. We need to observe every day. Why does a person standing in a bus or train tend to fall when a sudden start is made? If you remember, or if you have observed keenly, just recall, if you are traveling in a train, or if you have traveled in a train or bus, the moment the bus moves, there will be a movement. We give a jerk. So why is it happening? It is because there is a friction, there is a movement. Why does a person standing in a bus or a train tend to fall when a sudden start is made? It is because his feet move on, but his head stays still. Did it make any sense to you? When the author or when the concept is spoken about, the writer, pen, paper, or the author himself comparing himself to fall when there is a movement in train and bus. It is nothing but inventing seismometer. Seismometer, it has to be placed in a particular place, and when there is an earthquake, imagine the very ground where the seismometer is placed, if it is shaking, how will it read? So that is the basic concept here. Now let us solve the question. So this passage says that early instruments for measuring earthquakes were, remember, the moment you read this question, you might think the answer would be seismometer. No, but it is the rods and the table which were placed, early instruments. But if you read here, some of the early instruments are given here, but it is not the seismometers actually. It is about the rods and the table which were placed. The second question, why was it necessary to invent instruments to observe an earthquake? Because if you go back to the first slide, it comes without warning, and it was necessary therefore to invent instrument. And moreover, the instrument what was invented before, the rods and the table, it neither took rest nor it slept. So they wanted to invent the advanced instrument. And the rest 3 questions, I am leaving it to you. Think about it, answer it yourself, and try to understand why these complex topics will be asked in question. Few might find these questions or these topics to be very complicated. You may not be able to answer even one question, or maybe you can answer 2 or 3. But every time they will update, the board members or the board examination authority will be updating every year. You cannot expect the easy questions as we go on. You have to prepare yourselves for the complicated questions. The more questions you solve, the better you become. So with this, I wind up this session. In my next session, I will be discussing the question paper set, which will make it easy for those students who have already failed in second PUC board examinations, who are preparing for the preparatory exams. So thank you. Have a good day.